Yeah, shall we start now?
Yeah, I think we can start. So I'm switching off my video. You all can say Sunil is going to be there, and
Yeah.
one more person was going to be there. No? Some of the what we'll do is
Dr. Dhruv Batra.
okay. Any of the juniors want to take part? Just write in the question and answer session. If you want to take part, just write just now, and we'll include you in the panelists so that you can also come on stage, sort of. So if anybody wants to take part, write in the question and answer, and we'll start now. Okay, Madhu.
Okay. A very good afternoon to all of you, my dear colleagues and friends. What I'm trying to do is to show some case scenarios. I'll be posting in between after the history and findings, asking you what is a probable diagnosis at that point of time. And I think I'll not wait for you to get an answer from you. I may go on to the investigation which I thought was relevant. It may be correct, it may be wrong, but ultimately leading to a diagnosis is slightly away from what we usually think. So there are, but all our practical problems which we face in our day-to-day practice, nothing, no high level genetic disorders. So I'll start with the first case.
Hi, Nestle.
Hi, Sunil. Good to see you.
Yeah, nice seeing you. Well, you look fresh and healthy. Just like Madhu is looking fresh and healthy.
And I'm trying to enter. Okay. So can you see the slides?
No.
You can't see. Okay. Then I will do.
We have a couple of other doctors who want to join. They are joining. You continue.
Yeah. But only.
So now you will be able to share your slides. My slides is on.
Okay. Now, just 1 minute. Can you see the slides now?
No.
No.
No. Okay. Then that means I have to. Okay, now you'll be able to do. I'll show you just 1 minute. Now you'll be able to see now.
Yes.
So I'll start with the first case. The story of a 24-year-old man who has been on treatment with Eptoin for the last 5 years for seizure disorder, has presented with history of unsteadiness in gait for the last 1 year and numbness of both feet for the last 2 weeks.
Madhu, just 1 second. I'll just explain to everybody.
Yeah.
The videos of everybody can be seen and then it can overlap on the screen. So you may not see what the full slide is. If that is happening, you touch your finger on that panel there and you can make the video thing smaller. So you see only the
Speakers.
Screen.
Explain once again, Sudhir.
See,
Yeah, minimize.
That minimize. See, there is a button. You are seeing the videos in one panel. At the top, there is a button which is just like a small line that is minimize. Then single sort of rectangle that is small, and then double, and then full all people. So if you click on that dash line, it minimizes, and this videos then don't come in the way. You can see the whole PowerPoint. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. This unsteadiness is more at night. The last attack of seizure was 1 month back. No other relevant history. He's not a diabetic. I will show the video of the patient. His ocular movements were normal. There was no nystagmus. Tail examination normal. Tone power normal in both upper and lower. I show the video. I'll be showing the examination of what I am doing, because there won't be confusion as to whether I am right or wrong. And verify what I'm saying is correct or wrong.
இந்த கால நேரா வச்சுங்க. விடுங்க விடுங்க இது வச்சுங்க. நல்லா வச்சுங்க. விடுங்க. பாதம் மோல்ல வரட்டும். எல்லாம் வரட்டும். சரி விடுங்க. அப்படியே இருக்கட்டும்.
Biceps and supinator reflexes normal bilateral. But triceps reflexes, sorry, but decreased bilaterally, triceps are really insipid.
இப்போ இது மடக்கி வைங்க. இப்படி அப்படி பாதி 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 அப்படி இது மடக்கி வைங்க. போட்டுட்டா போதும்.
Abdominal reflexes are all intact. Both knee and ankle jacks were absent.
கைக்கு சேர்த்து பிடி. சரி விடுங்க. நான் திரும்ப கண்ணி பிடிச்சு பிடிக்கணே. வலிச்சு பிடிங்க. நான் கொடுக்காதீங்க. கை வச்சுங்க. நீ வலிச்சு பிடிங்க.
Okay, planters were indefinite.
லூசா போடணும். ஒன்றும் சேராங்க. ஒன்றும் சேராங்க. குத்தி மோல்ல வரும்போது எல்லாம் ஒரே மாதிரியா வித்தியாசமா இருக்கா?
Pain was decreased.
இது கூடுதலா கம்மியா? இது கம்மியா இருக்கு. ஜாஸ்தியா நம்ம சொல்லணும். ஜாஸ்தி.
There is a
இப்ப கம்மியா? ஜாஸ்தியா நம்ம சொல்லுங்க.
it is a
கிரான. இது
every sense normal in
தெரியுதுல? இப்போ
was impaired in both
இல்ல.
both feet.
கம்மியா இருக்கு தெரியுது. இப்போ
It's impaired. I'll tell you when it is possible.
தெரியுது.
That is able to feel over the malleolus.
இதுல மோல்ல ஆக்கு. எங்க ஆக்குன்னு சொல்லணும் என்ன? எப்படி?
Joint size is
இப்போ
mistakes in the upper.
கீழே. இப்போ
The time it's correct.
மேலே. இப்போ இப்போ
Nevertheless, he just makes some mistake.
சரி. இப்போ எப்படி? கீழே. இப்போ கீழே. இப்போ இப்போ சரி.
But in the lower limb, it was severely impaired.
தெரியல.
You cannot say where the
இப்போ
finger is. Even the movement of the finger is not able to appreciate.
இப்போ
Even the angle movement also
தெரியல.
is not able to feel the angle movement.
தெரியல. இந்த காலை மடக்கு தெரியான்னு சொல்லுங்க. இப்போ தெரியுதா இல்லையா?
Not able to feel.
நான் இப்ப மடக்கேன்ல இப்ப தெரியுது.
Okay. Romberg's is mildly positive. His gait is normal. Random that is pretty defective, but his gait is
அப்படி சும்மா கிடையாது. திரும்பி வா. திரும்பி வா. எப்படி கூடாது.
Okay. So the summary of examination findings: scalars are normal. Tone power normal in upper and lower limbs. DTR in upper limbs, biceps, triceps is normal. Absent supinator and finger flexion reflexes. In the lower limbs, both knee and ankle jacks are absent. Superficial reflexes, abdominal reflex normally in all four quadrants, plantar indefinite. Sensory, primary modalities, impaired pain in the distal part of both legs. Impaired vibration over toes, normal over the lateral malleoli. Normal vibration in the upper limbs. Joint position sense, impaired over fingers as well as or over the toes and ankle. Romberg's positive, gait normal, tandem walking defective. So what is your likely diagnosis in this patient?
Peripheral neuropathy.
Yeah, that's the most likely thing which we thought. Okay. So what investigations you need? So I did the blood examination was normal. TSH, PSP, PPS normal. Vitamin beta level was 526, which is within normal limit. Peripheral smear was normal. In nerve conduction study, motor conduction normal, FF latency normal, but we are interested in the sensory potentials are all normal. Sensory conduction normal. So what else you need now?
Serum folic acid. SSCP.
Serum folic acid was not done.
B12.
B12 was done. I told you it was normal. It was normal.
SSCP.
Okay, go ahead. So you want an MRI in the spine?
MRI of the spine.
Okay, I'll do it. So then questions which part?
Cervical spine.
Cervical spine.
Okay. So we did a lumbar spine initially, then cervical spine. This is MRI of the cervical spine.
Yeah, the cerebellum shows atrophy in the cervical spine that you have shown.
Okay. Now, so the MRI LS spine and cervical spine is reported to be normal. So what else you need now?
Workup for ganglionopathy?
Okay, ganglionopathy reflexes were, okay, ganglion is another possibility, or a CASP is another possibility, which can result also reflex and then this thing. So before that, an MRI brain, that is normal. Now, dorsal spine was done because the upper limb, lower limb, I mean, why it was done, I don't know, because it's already been done from outside. He came with MRI of all these things. So, MRI of the dorsal spine showed good osteophytes at this region, compressing the cord on the left side. Here. You can make it out here. Ventrolateral compression of the thoracic cord by calcified osteophyte. Now, what importance will you give to that? Do you think it is causative or not?
It doesn't explain the upper limb sensory loss and the loss of the
upper limb sensory loss you can't explain. So that means it's unlikely to be related to that. Moreover, lower limb loss also you can't explain.
Yes.
So can you? I'll go back to the cervical spine X-ray once again. Do you find any abnormality there? In fact, our radiologist picked up the subtle finding. Then we proceeded further with detailed study of the cervical spine.
There is atrophy. There is atrophy of the cerebellum, the upper part, and the cervical spine. So, and the medulla to some extent.
Okay, but the patient has no definite cerebellar signs at all, no nystagmus. The ataxia was deadly sensory ataxia. So anyway, there's some mild atrophy, but can't explain the physical findings in this patient.
Yeah.
But do you find anything abnormal here? No. Some signal change?
Mild hyperintensity.
Yeah, there's a mild hyperintensity. So we can see this is the CIS image. You can find out the hyperintensity in the gracilis and cuneate nucleus. And still more clearly you can make it out. This is the posterior column and the gracile nucleus and the cuneate nucleus. So you can, this is the 3D flare sequence, which is a thin cut flare, which clearly shows hyperintensity and the gracile and cuneate nucleus. Something like a hard sign you can make it on the coronal cut here. This is a diffusion weighted sequence, which is diffusion restricting. You can also clearly make it out the board-like rounded hyperintensity of the gracile and cuneate nucleus. Now you can make it out very clearly hyperintensity. So 3D flare diffuse study of the cervicomedullary region shows T2 hyperintensity and diffuse restriction of the gracilis and cuneatus. So what is the diagnosis now? Is it subicat combined degeneration affecting the gracilis and cuneatus or something else? What do you like to do now?
It's a tractopathy.
Did you do the homocysteine level?
Yeah, because patient has, this cannot explain certain findings in this patient. He's got prominent posterior column sensory loss, agreed, but he has also got a reflex loss. So the peripheral neuropathy is there, but mild. So that means he has to be nothing, I mean, you have to strongly consider SCD. So did a homocysteine level, which was elevated.
Very much elevated, yeah.
Okay. So that changes the diagnosis. Patient was put on anti-pertussin antibody was over negative. And patients put on just vitamin B12, improved remarkably over a period of 3 to 4 weeks time. Okay, shall I go to the next case? Any questions in this case?
Do we rule out syphilis here in such cases?
Syphilis? But
yes.
Yeah, after seeing the MRI picture, I don't think
okay,
that's good idea. Otherwise, we would have considered that possibility also.
But how did you account for the absent reflexes?
Yeah, that means this cannot be accounted by the post-column loss involvement alone. That means you must have some kind of a subclinical peripheral neuropathy.
Yes, he must be.
Yeah, because
see, that is not picked up on the nerve conduction.
Yeah, because if you look carefully, it's got decreased pain in the distal part of the both feet. That cannot occur with the post-column loss alone. That means he has got a small fiber neuropathy in addition.
Correct.
Picked up in nerve conduction study. Okay, shall I go to the next case?
Yeah, nice case.
Very nice case. Very nice.
Okay, now another one is a 6-year-old diabetic patient came with history of paresthesia in the left index finger 1 week back. So one more, before I tell you, what I usually do to save time, I have a targeted kind of examination. I take the symptom, try to think of one or two possible diagnoses, and then limit my examination to what is required. That's how I usually proceed. Otherwise, if you do complete examination, it will eat away your time. So this is how I am proceeding with all such cases. So paresthesia of the index finger 1 week back. Along with that, he noticed difficulty in picking up small objects, buttoning the shirt, and occasional dropping of the object. No other complaint. The complaints remained as such since then. So I thought history-wise, maybe numbness, index finger, and small muscle weak. Maybe is it carpal tunnel syndrome? That is the thing I had in mind. So started examining whether my postulate is correct or wrong. So started examining. Examine for his nail sign that there is normal side. Left side is the abnormal side. That is positive. You cannot prove the component. And started examining the small muscles. Finger extension also normal. That is good on the right side. That is weak on the left side. So I got APB was weak, Troponin is weak, and it's got numbness of the index finger. So I thought it goes with carpal tunnel syndrome, but I was not very happy in one point. Can you tell me what is the point in which I was a little disturbed in this patient? They call carpal tunnel syndrome. And you will come to that later on. Somebody had weakness left upon APP, no sensory loss, DTR normal, but you have no sensory loss. But very often carpal tunnel, you may not get a sensory loss. Only symptoms will be there. So is there anything on? Okay. Because of the oddity in the history, I started examining further. Then I found that it's performance of the on the left side. And little more careful examination, start examining muscle coordinates along with that is normal on the left side. Fingerprints are all normal. But since the policy is long, good part on the right side. It was weak on the left side. Okay, now
Madhu.
Oh,
Madhu.
Yes. Yeah.
You turn off the video of the audio of the video.
Okay. Right. Sure. Okay. What is the diagnosis now? But in that case, if you reduce the video, I can't hear you. I won't be able to hear you. Now I'll speak a little bit. Okay.
When you want people to hear that audio, Then you play that audio, but that time you
okay. Okay, right. Agreed. So, what is the diagnosis now?
So it's definitely involving much more than the median nerve.
Correct.
You know, the adductor is weak and the extensor is weak. So the lesion has to be more proximal, either in the brachial plexus or in the roots.
Okay. Now let us see what I did. So 3 muscles supplying the thumb which are affected are APV, extensor pollicis, abductor pollicis. So there is not fitting with a nerve pattern at all. If you have got weakness of thumb alone, all muscles are spared. It's unlikely for not fitting with the root or nerve distribution. As you said, could be plexus, but it's very unlikely. It's very odd that all muscles supplying thumb alone is affected. So, what possibility now? You consider some other thing. I did on this particular test to confirm my postulate. I'll show you what did I did now. Look what I did. I'm doing the dexterity movement of the right. This is a normal side. Now this is quite clumsy on the left side. See, you cannot do it.
Will it be a cortical stroke, sir?
Or it could be.
Cortical stroke.
It's maybe cortical because he's clumsy.
Okay, very.
It's a clumsy hand.
So whenever lesion is confined only to the thumb, think of cortical lesion. And he has got an infarct in the right.
Yeah, I thought so. Being a diabetic, I thought so it would be an infarct.
Yeah. Now the thing is
the thumb area is large on the homunculus, so therefore the thumb appears to be more specifically involved.
Okay, right. Now the question is, what made you think it is infarct? That's more important, because the lesson is that when the disability is out of proportion is weakness, look for loss of dexterity due to human lesion. And what was the clue in the history? He speaks against carpal tunnel syndrome. That's the way we went along this long way of examination. Because
it was clumsy.
Drop things on his hands. Which hardly ever you get in a person's CTS.
How about the reflexes?
Reflexes are all normal. Sensations normal.
Madhu, the pronator sign would have also helped.
No, it was all negative. Here only everything was normal. Reflexes normal, no tone, nothing. Because
pronator sign,
that is also negative. Subsequently, I checked that. He had no evidences, even subtle perineal sense was not there. Okay. Shall I go to any questions? Shall I go to the next case?
Yeah, sometimes we see these cases acutely, and then we always wonder whether it is lower motor neuron or upper motor neuron.
Yes.
And you have to look for the other risk factors.
Yeah, in fact, long time back, I had a wrist-off patient. We initially thought it was radial palsy. Actually, it turned out to be a hand-of-variant infarct.
Yeah.
Dr. Madhusudan, you could ask him to pick up a coin or something and show that there is loss of dexterity and a clumsy hand.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But here the clue is that suppose he has got, say, some people with abductor pollicis may not be able to take out a coin. But you see that the other fingers which are affected, he cannot do the fast movement. When you do the dexterity movement, I will show that particular part again. See, when you do this movement, that he could do.
Speed.
See, the other fingers are all normal. Power is normal, but the fast movements are decreased. That's the thing which should make you suspect is something beyond LMN. So shall I go to the next case?
Yes, sure.
Okay. It's a story of a 77-year-old man. It's an old case of diabetes, bipolar disorder on lithium for the last 25 years. He has presented with complaints of walking difficulty for the last 2 years. I'm really disappointed. Okay. Mainly in slowness in walking. No history of any tremor of the limbs. 1 year later, he noticed difficulty in getting up from squatting position and difficulty in climbing up and down the stairs. Along with that, he also noticed paresthesia and numbness over both feet, which ascended up to both knees for the last 1 year. You also notice difficulty in putting footwear into the chappals. The walking difficulty increased progressively over the next 6 months and started using walking aid for the last 4 months. For the last 6 months, he also noticed difficulty in taking a bolus of food with hands and noticed dropping of objects from his hands and difficulty in buttoning the shirt for the last 6 months. No bowel or bowel bladder problems. Presently is admitted with worsening of symptoms over the 2 weeks. So summing up the history, he had progressive weakness of lower limb and upper limb with sensory complaint, predominantly in the distal part. Weakness, but in the lower limb was started in the proximal part. Okay. Examination, this is the video of the patient. There is no spasticity in the upper limb, but he had wasting of the small muscles of the hand, which you can see there. Tone was normal, there is no finger pressure tone. Power, biceps, triceps, deltoid were all normal. The wrist dorsiflexion was weak on the right side. It was good on the left side, maybe 4+ also on the left side. But finger flexors was weak on the left side. And significant severe weakness of finger flexors on the right arm. Extensor support long is also weak on the right side. It's also weak on the left side. Finger extensor weak bilaterally. Finger flexors of good power. Abductor pollicis brevis was weak, and the abductor digitae minimi and interossei were also weak bilaterally. Now, the palmar interossei were weak, and the prominent sign was positive bilateral. So all small muscles were weak, along with finger extensors bilaterally. In the lower limb, tone was normal. But his hip flexion was weak, just barely 3. He couldn't hold on the left side. Same thing on the right side also. Knee extensor was weak, again somewhere around grade 2 to grade 3, just grade 3. So again, not able to lift at all, maybe 2 to 3. Then the hip abductors, adductors are also weak. Okay, weak. Then dorsiflexion and hip extensors were also weak. Knee extensors, knee flexors were also weak. And the dorsiflexion was a little more powerful than what you get in the proximal muscles. It was about 3+ to 4. Plantar was also 4+. 4 to 4+. They're also weak. The reflexes, all reflexes were absent. Knee jack absent, ankle jack absent, everything was absent. But he is also diabetic, to remind you, chronic diabetic also. And the plantar response was again usually indefinite. Not get elicited plantar response. And look at the way it's also got wasting of the small muscles of the feet also. From the sensory system, in the upper limb, it was impaired up to the elbow. That particular point is showing. On the left upper limb also, it is up to the mid forearm. That area is telling. Up to that area is impaired. Over the lower limb, it went up to the upper part of the thigh. There he says he's feeling the pain. The vibration in the upper limb was the elbow he is able to feel normally. The fingers also it is able to feel. He says yes, he can feel the vibration. The lower limb is not able to feel over that area. This area also is not. He is able to feel over the tibia tuberosity, but not over this. He is able to feel over that anti-superiliac spine. Joint sense was impaired in both upper limbs and lower limbs. He's making mistakes there. I think when you may not understand my language, so I will skip that part. The lower limb is also impaired. That's also impaired in the lower limb. Let's go to the second video. I looked for any pseudoarthritosis because I couldn't get any typical pseudoarthritosis. But nevertheless, he had impaired joint sense in the upper limb, even the vibration was normal. Gait he had needed 2% support to walk. He could not stand, his convulsions positive. So summing up, he had bilateral ptosis where I think it's unrelated. Motor system, they are wasting and weakness of all small muscles of both upper limbs. Bilateral wasting of tibialis anterior. Power tone normal in both upper and lower limbs. The upper limb power, shoulder elbow grade 5 bilaterally. Wrist flexors 4/5 on the right hand side. Wrist extensor 2/5 on the right hand. Finger extensor 3/5 on the left hand. Hand grip weak bilaterally. Finger flexors are normal bilaterally. All small muscles, thenar, hypothenar are all weak. So in all small muscles, finger extensors are weak bilaterally. Wrist extensors are also weak in addition on the right hand. Lower limb, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, grade 3/5 on right side, grade 4 on the left side. Knee flexion 2/5 bilaterally. Extension 3 bilaterally, dorsiflexion grade 4, plantar flexion grade 4 plus, DT are all absent, plantar mute. Sensory upper limb, impaired sensation of pain of both hands up to the elbow bilaterally. Vibration is normal in the upper limb, impaired joint sense over both hands. In the lower limb, sensory pain level up to mid-thigh, impaired vibration up to the knee. Query up to iliac crest, that part I am not very sure. Joint sense impaired up to the ankle. So, what do you think the possible diagnosis is?
Polyradicular neuropathy.
Yeah, polyradicular. That's a straightforward diagnosis, which I also thought. The only odd point was he had got a wasting of the small muscles of the hand, which I didn't expect with the demyelinating polyneuropathy. So I thought maybe having, because that could be an associated diabetic retinopathy as well.
Yes, sir.
That's the thing which I had in mind. So blood chemistry was normal, LFT, calcium, hemoglobin, except for the diabetic status. NCV was done, which showed
conduction law.
no, and but the amplitude distally is low.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the velocity is normal. Distal latency is also quite normal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and the amplitude in the left peroneal is decreased. Right tibial, left tibial is decreased. Okay, that can go with the axonopathy. And sensory, all sensory potential absent except in the right and left ulna. Lower limb is also absent. So maybe he's got a diabetic sensory neuropathy with associated carpal tunnel. Could be. Now, the FF latency is prolonged only in one. All other things are small. So that made me think maybe it's slightly odd for a CADP, which I thought initially. Luckily for me, and the chaser protein was done, which was 194 milligram, no cells. No, in fact, the MRI was brought by the patient, which was taken 2 years back. Because I wouldn't have asked for MRI, but in fact, the patient himself brought the MRI. We showed a small disc at C5C6 level, which of course could not explain the rest of the finding. But there is a thoracic MRI showed a long extensive hyperintensity from mid-thoracic level up to the corners. Can you make out the hyperintensity there?
Yes, yes.
And you see the hyperintensity, they took a FLAIR MRI brain to find out any other white matter lesions in the brain also, which was not there, just not. Now, what do you think the possibility now?
You know, with this large lesion in the thoracic cord in an elderly man, you would first think of spinal dural AVF.
Okay, very good. That's a fantastic possibility. But I never thought of that possibility after examination because it's got an element.
No, not on examination. It looks like a neuropathy, you know.
Yeah, right.
It looks like a severe sensory motor neuropathy. But this MRI picture is quite typical, I think.
Okay. So look at the MRI again carefully, what the patients brought. He had a suspicion of this flavoids here. But the radiologist did not agree with that. He had a flavoid. So that's what the one said. Then took an MRI, repeat MRI. There I thought they has got a flavoid. Then they took a 3T test lab to make them convinced that there is there. Now you can make out the flavoids there. Then we had a subsequent angiogram. It showed a dural AV fistula. So this is how this case presented, because clinically this is not tallying with what the investigation ultimately turned out to be. That is presented in this case. Your diagnosis is correct, Exipura. This is a dural AV fistula.
How were the upper limbs involved with that lesion?
Probably.
Or it was ischemia?
No, he had probably, in dural AV fistula, it is known that the ischemia can occur in segments above the level of the
above the lesion, yeah.
Because they can tend to retrograde flow from below upward. That is one explanation to be given. Secondly, in this patient, he has got associated disc lesion. Whether that is causative, I am not sure. Most likely, the dural AV fistula itself is supplying, measure responsible for the ischemia in the upper part also.
Sir, one doubt, sir.
Yes?
Sir, in the NCS, the left ulnar was showing conduction block.
But you are not very sure about the conduction block because the reason I'll tell you, the distal amplitude itself is low, less than 50%. When the distal amplitude is less than 50%, it is difficult to comment on a conduction block.
Okay.
Moreover, usually conduction block indicate demyelinating process, in which case I expect a distal latency prolongation or a conduction velocity prolongation, which is not there in this patient.
Okay.
So, based on only one finding that cannot jump on to conduction.
Okay.
Why not two diagnoses? One is that he has this AVM, dural AVM, and second is why not he has CIDP in addition.
But we have no clear evidence of any CADP electrophysiology.
Yes.
It is not favoring a CADP pattern at all. Yes. It is sort of the wasting. So that's the point.
Not so much, yes.
Clinically, I thought it's CADP plus diabetic, but this is what turned out after investigation. But I never see investigation before I make some clinical error. That will be wrong. Then only I can say I made a thought diagnosis CADP pattern, but turned out to be like this.
Or a sural nerve biopsy in addition to completely rule out a CIDP.
The problem here is mainly what is causing is we are seeing significant lesion in the long extent from mid-thoracic up to the corners.
Yes.
That can explain the element finding in this patient.
In the lower limbs, in the upper
lower. The upper limb agree with you. So upper limb can be explained by either fistula or unrelated cervical dysfunction. But his problem is disability is only in the lower limb. His complaints are only in the lower limb. Minimum complaint only in the upper. Even the complaint numbness is not disabled by that. So I think what we did, we underwent surgery in Sridhar, they did what do you call embolization.
Embolization.
Onyx, they put remarkably improved. Remarkably.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, very nice.
How long did it take to improve?
But 3 months. With 3 months, he started improving.
In 3 months.
And
did the wasting become less also?
No, that part I'm not very sure. Bystander came and told me he started walking. Said no problem.
Okay.
But I not seen him.
So that's great. That's absolutely great.
Yeah, a CIDP would not walk. So, yeah.
Okay. We'll go to the next case.
Yeah.
Complaints of this patient came with I forgot the age, but 35-year-old male. Complained numbness of big toe for the last 6 months. And about the same time, he noticed difficulty in lifting up the right foot. The complaint did not improve with medication. The deficit almost static, no paresthesia, even though he complained of numbness. No weakness of any other body parts. No hypopigmented patches. No lower back ache or root pain. He's not a diabetic. See the examination.
Age of the patient.
The hip flexors are all normal. Knee extensors normal. Dorsiflex normal on the left side. Right, this is the tibialis anterior I'm checking on the right side. That is quite strong. And everters were significantly weak. He couldn't keep the foot everted. His everted is weak. Plantar flexion was normal. EHL was weak. On the left side, EHL is normal. Did the flexor pollicis as long as it's normal on the left side. Right side also is got a good power. I'm not sure I could overcome it with 8 force, but whether there's a mild weakness present or not, I'm not sure. But it appears to be a little weak. But adductor hallucis is normal on both sides. Okay. Sensory examination was normal. He has got a foot drop like gait like this. You can see the gait. Okay. Then also the findings, examination, right? The findings are confined, the motor findings are confined to the right lower limb. Dorsiflexion inversion the right angle on the right side. Weakness of EHL, choreomine weakness of flexor pollicis longus. Plantar flex is normal. Left lower limb normal, but the reflexes, the knee jerk bilaterally brisk more on the left side. Angle jerk normal bilateral. Sensory system normal. There's no nerve thickening. SLR negative. Gait steppage gait which already seen. So what is your diagnosis in this patient? I'll make this is the volume. So what will be a diagnosis?
What is the age of the patient?
Age is about 35-40.
Okay.
And there's no sensory loss.
No sensory loss. He complained of mild paresthesia of the big toe. Numbness is said, not paresthesia.
Numbness.
Yeah, but examination did not make out any finding. Sensory loss.
Okay.
Well, my question is, can it be a common periodic nerve palsy?
So with a normal ankle and no sensory loss.
No, ankle reflex will be normal in CPN palsy.
Yes. Dorsiflexion had normal power.
Yes.
No, dorsiflexion reverters were weak. Now the clue is that he has got a normal tibialis anterior. Sapien palsy, we expect a tibialis anterior to be weak. So that cannot be sapien palsy. So possibilities we can consider will be sapien palsy. So it's got a spared right tibialis anterior. Then the other two things I'll show you later on. So we did an NCS. The right peroneal is not picked up from the EDB on the right side, but there is a good proximal pickup. Left side is normal. FL study is absent on the right side, as suspected, and no sensory pattern, no abnormality in the sense. So, localization now.
Localization above whether it is cord or whether it is root. Cord
root or anterior horn cell.
Yeah. Okay, cord, root, or anterior horn cell. But cord.
Any EMG done?
I'll come to that. In the cord, I have tried to analyze clinically, but here no proximal muscle weakness was not there. Plexus were normal, only confined. Yes, could be cord, but such a focal weakness, you would think more of cortical rather than cord. It's usually focal weakness with hitting only the distal part. Anyway, okay. So these are the possibilities kept. Right sapien with the point was already mentioned. Right L4 radiculopathy, as somebody said, anterior horn cell.
Anterior horn cell, yeah.
Yeah, cortical foot drop. Now let's see the odd points for that sapien palsy. Tibialis anterior is normal. It's a very strong point against sapien palsy. In the wake of weak everters, snap is normal. Snap can be normal if it is a conduction block at fibula head, but here is there definitely axon loss. So that sapien palsy is very unlikely in this case. Right L4 radiculopathy is possible. Nothing again is that. Anterior horn cell
was normal. Hip abduction. Hip abduction.
Hip abduction was normal.
Okay.
Agree with you. That's an odd point for radiculopathy. But sometimes, if with only one root is affected, the main manifestation may be in the EHL and everters. But agree with you, hip abduction and hip extension should be affected a little bit. Okay. But that was not. This, let us see. Probably I may not have examined. Probably I'll examine him later on.
Okay.
So anterior horn cell, he complained of numbness but no objective sensory loss. So that's possibility can be ruled out. Cortical foot drop is a possibility. So what other test you need?
Put in a needle, yeah.
I did an EMG. It shows innervation from the peroneus longus. Decreased okay, that shows denervation. But see that tibialis anterior is paired only in the peroneus long. So that speaks against the common peroneal palsy. So that what we are ruled out by this is the cortical lesion or the pyramidal lesion is unlikely. So cord lesion cortical is out now. So now what remains is that right L4 radiculopathy is quite strong. So the patient was re-examined. Somebody asked, why don't you do hip examination? So start examining this is a prone position. That is weak on the right side. Hip extension is normal on the left side. The gluteus maximus is also normal on the right side. Then start checking abduction. The പൊക്കിയും പിടിക്കണം അങ്ങനെ പിടിച്ചോണം ആർക്കൊന്നും വേണ്ട ഡോക്ടർമാരിൽ വേറെ ആരോ അങ്ങനെ പിടിച്ചോ ഓളോട്ട് പിടിച്ചോണം ഇനി ഈ വശത്തോട്ട് normal on the left side. So that tells you has got an L5 probably is not adequate, predominantly L5 radical. So weakness written with L5 plus minus S1 radiculopathy. So we did MRI. MRI showed a disc at L4, L5, L5S1. Also the axial film, this also you can very clearly make it out. This is a disc there. Okay, but what is again this diagnosis? But I had, in fact, I would have shown the reflexes also. I'll go to the, re-examine the patient, any odd point, because this needs a and left upgrade panda. I'll show that part.
Re-examine. No pain also.
Pardon?
There's no pain also.
No pain at all. So examine the patient once again. Biceps supinated normal. Biceps has decreased. And look at now, this abdominals are absent.
Relax it here now.
It's absent on the left side, and well exit on the right side. Then started examining the reflex once again because I find abdominal. I'm trying to look for any element lesion above the lost abdominal. Left triceps was reduced compared to the right side. And look at the nature. He came with weakness of right foot, but his left knee jack was missing. And left panda was unknown. Now, what do you want to consider now?
I would consider MND now.
But already we have demonstrated his weakness is the distribution of the root in the lower limb.
Yeah, but the reflexes are all brisk.
Yeah, correct. That's correct. Perfectly right. But the thing is that your point is there is no sensory that also take into consideration. But if the weakness is in the distribution of a root or a nerve, always try to think of think away from anti-Nephron cell, because to diagnose anti-Nephron cell, the involvement of the muscle should be in a patchy pattern, not conforming to a root or nerve distribution. If it's conforming to root distribution, we can explain by a cauda equina.
Okay, why don't we do a whole spine MRI?
Yeah, I'll come to that. So I'll do the MRI before MRI. I'm always trying to go in a clinical approach.
Okay.
Okay. That's what I'm discussing like this. So in cauda equina, the anterior roots and motor roots and sensory roots are separate. I have seen even tumors in the cauda equina only producing pure motor cells, leave alone disc. This can occur in the cauda equina compression, unlike a plexus involvement, a peripheral involvement, because the roots are separate, motor roots and sensory roots are separate. So this patient has got a pyramidal lesion above D7. It may be in the cervical or maybe in the brain. So the cervical spine showed as disc lesion with some myelomyelitic change in cervical column. So in fact, he has got two pathologies. Right, it's not left, right. Right L5 radiculopathy with the cervical spondylotic radiculopathy disease. Now, I brought this clip only to show that he came with the foot drop on the right side. The examination showed brisk knee jerk on the left side. That deviated the examination and went to do a detailed examination. Came in with a complaint of lesion in the cervical column. Okay. Shall I stop or continue for one more case?
Hello? One more case.
One more case will be fine.
Okay, one more case.
But Dr. Madhusudan,
yes.
You see, this cervical myelopathy sometimes is a red herring, and very often we see these discs, and we often see. So, do you have an actual picture to show? If the anterior horn cell is involved, the owl sign is there, or the snake eye sign is there.
Yeah. In fact, it was confined to the left pyramidal tract, left tartar column. I did not show that. Because it was not affecting the right side, only confined to the left side.
Only the left side.
Yes,
So, you know, so if it is asymmetrical, so asymmetry is also can be in favor of motor neuron disease.
Okay, it could be, but we have no evidence of any element finding anywhere else other than the suprarenal nerve.
Yeah, but you know, it may come later, you see. I mean, if you follow up the patient, you know, the thing is, if we, many times, we face this problem many times, you know, there is associated cervical spondylosis and there is underlying actually ALS, and you operate the spine and still the person does not improve, he worsens. So this is a dilemma very, very commonly seen actually.
Perfectly agree with you. But 2-3 points I'll tell you one again, which I wouldn't consider primarily in this way, but definitely needs follow-up. Because we have found a lesion which can explain the right weakness of the right lower limb. And we also found a lesion we can explain the left pyramidal lesion. And the MND, we don't expect an absent abdominals on one side. That's very odd in MND. Usually, the abdominal reflex is preserved. So putting it all together, all thinking about a treatable condition.
Okay, let's operate this chap and see how he does.
How it is. Yeah, perfect.
And you tell us after 6 months.
Actually, there are two things. There are two things. One is the abdominal reflex, which is absent. Second is absence of any fasciculations anywhere. And it's very localized, and the MRI is
Okay, fine. See, the diagnosis, I'm not being adamant. I'm just saying now let's operate this chap and let's see what happens to him.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll go to the last case. It's a short case. So 40-year-old lady noticed numbness and pumpness of both hands for the last 10 days. I'll show the video of the patient. She had the abductor pollicis normal. The opponent's pollicis was also normal. She came with numbness of both hands. But the FTI, the fastocentrosis was weak. That's quite weak. But the ADM was quite strong. That is weak. But the ADM was not weak. That is quite strong. That is weak. The interossei were weak bilaterally. And the Foreman sign was positive bilateral. I cannot hold it correctly. So reflexes are normal, sensations normal. So bilateral weakness of all interossei and adductor pollicis. Normal thenar muscles, normal abductor digiti minimi and opponents. Rest of the muscles normal, DTR normal, tensile system normal. So what do you think the possibility is?
Deep branch of ulnar nerve.
Yeah, most likely,
But bilateral.
Yeah, so she must be banging her hands on something.
Okay, right. So with the conduction,
banging the hand like that. I don't know what her what is her occupation.
Occupation is a person. It's what do you call it? Clerical work in the secretary.
Clerical work.
And the secretary should go there and works in the evening, come back.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah. So did a conduction, ulnar nerve, normal, right side, left side normal, sensory conduction also normal.
Now median you have to pick up at the adductor. You stimulate, the ulnar, you stimulate at the wrist and pick up at the adductor pollicis.
But difficult to pick up the adductor pollicis. It's a deep-seated muscle, no? It is overlapped by the other muscle, thenar muscles. But difficult to pick up from adductor alone.
Ulnar was done with the FDI or ADM?
Yeah, that's the correct answer. Usually we do conduction on the ADM, no?
Yes, sir.
So this is normal. But now you did a pickup from the FDI.
Yes.
So the pickup from the FDI showed a decrease in amplitude, which you can see here. So always they make such a patient may come to you with mimicking a motor neuron disease, like on small muscle using bilaterally, no sensory. You may jump into the conclusion, but make it a point to pick up potential from the affected weak muscle, that is the FTA, which is supraspinal muscle. So this is picked up from the FTI on the right side. This is the ulnar potential for comparison. Okay, what in a retrospect, what happened now? The history was retaken. She started learning scooter, the Honda Activa, for first time, and had undergone 3-4 hours of training on the day prior to the onset of the symptoms. That was the causing her. This is the one of the
handlebar palsy.
This is the type of this. So there are 4 types. I think you'll not spend time on that 4 types of Tyrone canal. So I'll stop here, or can go further one more case. I can stop if you want.
You can take one more.
One more case.
One more case. Okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, you know, we are getting very interested to hear more and more from you.
Madhusudan, I really like the way you're teaching. You know, it looks like I wish I had a teacher like you in my DM days.
Arey, yeah, you had also good teachers, yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, very long time ago.
Yeah, Madhusudan, carry on.
The 44-year-old man had history of trauma 1 month back. Sorry, let me see whether it's a correct case or not. I think this is not a very important case. I will go to the other case. It will save time. I will go to a better one. Okay. He's a 55-year-old man. He presented with a history of numbness of the left palm, as well as inability to use his left hand following a fall 4 months back, and remained static since then. So history of numbness of the left palm, as well as inability to use his left hand following a fall. So this examination finding, deltoid was normal. Triceps was normal. Wrist extension was quite normal, good power. But the finger extension was also good, not very mild weak, not very convincing. But the small muscles interossea were weak. The findings are confined left. This abductor digiti minimum was weak. FTA was weak. And C is totally unable to flex the wrist at all. Flex the fingers nor the wrist. He cannot flex the fingers at all. As opposed to good finger extensions. Flexor pollicis longus also he cannot flex it. He cannot abductor pollicis brevis also is weak. Flexor pollicis brevis is weak. He cannot keep the thumb abducted. There's so much weakness of introversion, he cannot approach with the finger. Then you do a Froment sign, that is also, he cannot do, Froment will be negative because he cannot flex the thumb. Let us say the sensory, he is telling the sensations are impaired over the medial 2 fingers. Is over the medial 2 fingers. That area he says legs. And he is pointed out when it will become feeling. He is impaired up, that is impaired up to that level. Okay. So, summary by the findings, weakness almost 8-0 for finger flexes, flexor pollicis longus, abductor pollicis longus. Moderate weakness of thenar muscles, hypothenar and interossea. About 1 to 2, but the other is scale 0. normal power for the extensors of the wrist, extensors of fingers, and extensors of pores is low. Sensory impairment, the medial two fingers up to the mid forearm on the medial side. Now, where is the localization and what do you want me to do?
Here also, sir, the weakness is in multiple, you cannot say in one nerve territory. So it is multiple nerves are involved.
Okay, so
this also I would like to put in the cortex because
in the cortex. But you know, if you ask me why, I will not consider cortex because of the following reason. The cortical lesion, the pyramidal lesion, the maximum affection will be in the small muscles, especially the abductors interossei, as well as the finger extensors. Here, the finger flexors and the wrist flexors are actually weak, zero power. That is quite compatible with the pyramidal lesion. Pyramidal distribution is mainly in the extensors of the hand. That is the gravity muscles rather than anti-gravity muscles. So I think that distribution is unlikely for a pyramidal.
And there is sensory impairment on the medial aspect of the hand and the forearm.
Yeah, more up to the mid forearm.
Up to the mid forearm. So it cannot be the ulnar nerve. It has to be more proximal.
Because as per the finger flexors all, so the ulnar is definitely not possible.
So it is a proximal lesion, maybe at the roots of brachial plexus.
Okay, which root we like to postulate?
C8T1.
C8.
Okay. C8T1, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe C7 also.
Apical lung cancer you want to know.
There could be a cancer, a pancreas tumor.
Let's first localize before going to the etiology.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So C8T1 radiculopathy.
Wait, but it can be lower trunk of brachial plexus also.
Yes.
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 It could be middle cord of brachial plexus also.
Yes.
So these are the three localizations which is possible.
Yeah. So brachial plexus or roots. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like to have further investigation to further characterize the lesion?
Do an X-ray.
No, I think don't we do conduction study to find out?
Okay, do Okay.
Okay. So CMAP for the left ulnar, no potential picked up. CMAP for the left median, no potentials. Left radial, normal potential. Left ulnar snap absent. And left median snap present. So that tells you the lesion has to be in the above three possibilities can occur. Can be medial cord. But one thing we can exclude. Where is the one possibility we can exclude is CAD1 radiculopathy. Radiculopathy means the roots of the, not the roots of the brachial plexus, but proximal to that, because you won't get a sensory potential. Or putting in other words, sensory potential should be normal if it is a preganglionic lesion. Being sensory potential absent means the lesion has to be either in the lower trunk or the brachial plexus or the medial cord. Correct?
Yes.
So this is again same thing which I shown. Medial snap, CMAP is absent, ulnar CMAP is absent. But medial sensory is normal. But ulnar sensory is absent. That's a typical of medial cord or lower trunk involvement. So now I will differentiate medial cord versus lower trunk. What will you do now?
MRI.
But MRI can differentiate these two.
MRI of the brachial plexus.
MRI brachial plexus MRI is, I said, how many times are we able to
do an EMG of the proximal muscles, let's see.
Which muscle you would like to do?
Biceps.
But that is not going to help us. That is separated by C6 root. Our problem
C6.
is there.
So, no, I can't remember the anatomy so well of the medial and lower.
Our problem is differentiating medial cord versus lower trunk.
Yeah.
That means we have to sample a muscle which should be separated by the lower trunk but not by the medial.
Yeah. So which is that muscle? Pronator teres?
No, not pronator teres, also C5, C6.
Can I look
I'll have to look at the table. You know, I can't remember offhand. I'll have to look at the chart for this one.
Okay. So now let's see, that is out. Now these two are differentiating. What do you want to know? So I did the EMG of the EIP, extensor indices. Extensor indices, the iron is the muscle, or extrinsic adrenaline is the muscle, which is separated through the posterior division of the lower trunk of the brachial plexus, which goes through the posterior cord. So otherwise, rest of everything is continuous as the medial cord. Lower trunk continues as the medial cord. The only muscle which can do is look for the EIP, the extensor indices. Here you can easily pick a denervation, the vascular introversion, that can occur in both, but the EIP is normal. This is the EMG from the EIP. Normal. So the lesion is now in the medial cord, not in the lower trunk. So retaking the history, during the fall, a piece of asbestosis penetrated his left axilla. A plastic surgeon operated the axilla and wound was sutured. And weakness in left hand was persisting even though he noticed mild improvement in numbers. So that's the story.
Yeah, okay. Actually, when you were showing now, I thought there was a scar here somewhere in the axilla.
Yeah, there's a scar in the axilla.
Yeah. Right. So, but you know, I was not sure whether that video was clear or not clear, but there seemed to be a scar in the axilla somewhere.
Exactly. What he said is correct. I deliberately did not give that history because
but this localization is good. You know, it's a good exercise for us to keep our brains active.
Yeah, with medial cord and this is how students know. I do like this only. I'm asked about the important history. Okay. So, any other questions? So,
oh my God, there are so many, 162 questions.
Okay, I'm ready to answer. What
my God, Sudhir, I don't know when. Sudhir.
Yeah. You want me to take the question and answer?
Yeah, take all those questions. No, there are 162 questions.
162. Okay.
All of them are not questions. Few of them, like while Dr. Madhusudanan was asking questions, few of them have answered over there.
Okay. So what are the questions?
Where are the questions then?
In the same place, but we will have to scroll through.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That'll be difficult now. So I think, can you choose 2-3 important questions so that I can answer?
Yeah, let's see if we can choose.
Let's see. Looking at the...
Okay, so what I will do is, just to help you out, where people have just given answers, I will dismiss them.
Okay, can you put
Yes, we have only the questions remaining then.
Oh, there are questions on each this thing. So
I think we can take 1 or 2 questions on each case.
It's difficult to find out that.
Yeah.
Can SACD occur with normal B12 levels? And what is the gold standard to diagnose SACD?
Okay, the gold standard is methylmalonic acid, but it's difficult to do methylmalonic acid. It's costly also. So ideal test, practically we can do homocysteine. That's not very costly. But B12 level is, you cannot relay B12 level at all. At 2-3 cases where B12 is entirely normal, you can't have B12 deficiency. So that's not at all. At least you have to do homocysteine. The best would be methylmalonic acid.
There's another one, Megha Sharda. Sir, normal B2 levels are normal. Still, should we supplement B12 for treatment?
Yes, of course. Because that's not enough. We got to supplement B12 for treatment. B12 deficiency is diagnosed not by the B12 level alone, but by the homocysteine itself. That is the earliest evidence of B12 deficiency.
Sir, in that case of SCD, if the patient had diffusion restriction,
yes,
was that an expected finding, or?
I do not know whether this can occur in that or not. But since this particular patient had, probably it can occur. I have not seen that before. I may have to look back the previous MRI of SCD whether there is a diffuse in the posterior column present or not. That is not an expected finding. In fact, I have not seen SCD which is confined only to the nucleus gracilis and cuneatus. This is the first time I am seeing.
Let me ask the question. What is your view using cyanocobalamin versus methylcobalamin in treating SCD and other B12 deficiencies? Because
in fact,
companies, they promote methylcobalamin and it's much more costlier than cyanocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin.
Okay, so, I agree with you. That's my viewpoint also. I have no idea about that, how to differential benefit of these two. You are the better person to answer that.
All three are equal in my view.
Okay,
okay, Nasli, any other question you?
No, but there are many congratulatory messages for the excellent cases.
Thank you.
Many. I can't read them all out, but there are many like that.
Just one more here.
What about copper? Somebody asked, in that B12 case, copper deficiency or what?
Yeah,
is that a differential diagnosis?
Absolutely, because in posterior column involvement, SCD is the different types of SCD picture is copper deficiency, zinc intoxication, HIV myelopathy, and nitrous oxide intoxication all comes under the different diagnosis of vitamin B12 deficiency.
So where do you get copper deficiency?
Usually what we get is in person who consume large amount of zinc in the form of some of these preparations contain vitamin preparation contain large amount of zinc. So that's usually a situation where you get copper deficiency. I don't personally, I don't have much experience with copper deficiency patients. I have not seen one. Only a theoretical knowledge I have. Any other question?
Okay. What did you do for the deep branch of ulnar nerve? What did you tell the patient?
Yeah, that's the thing. I asked them, stop learning scooter. What do people do now? When they start learning scooter, they hold the handlebar very tightly. Because that's invariably like that because of the fear of the first time riding. So I asked them, stop riding for a scooter for 2-3 weeks and take a short course of steroid. Invariably they improve. All the cases I have seen has improved. And they can learn, go back to scooter riding again, but ask them not to hold it too tightly. Keep it.
Yeah. Another question is, by EMG, can you distinguish between anterior horn cell and root?
No, that by EMG means if the axon is affected, the anterior horn cell, wherever the axon is affected, you just can't differentiate EMG. Because the anterior horn cell is coming out through the axon to the periphery. Wherever with the site of lesion, be it in the peripheral nerve or the root or the brachial plexus or the anterior horn cell, everything will show denervation if that motor fiber is affected. So that cannot localize where it is. It is the distribution.
Suppose you do paraspinal EMG.
That's what I said. So it is the distribution of the denervation of the muscle, although which are the muscles affected by denervation, that helps you to localize. Putting in other words in simple terms, it is just pure anatomy. Suppose the denervation is confined to the muscle separated by one particular nerve node, now that nerve is a lesion. If it is in the root and distribution, that root is affected. If it is in the proximal part and the radical, paraspinal will be affected. So the distribution of the muscle where denervation is occurring will try to help you to the localize. Otherwise, by just finding denervation, it will not. It is the distribution of the muscle which is affected, which help you to localize.
Yes. Dr. Manoj Hunur is asking, what is the unique apparatus you use to check the sensory examination?
Yeah. That was something which I also wanted to ask.
I have no unique apparatus, only bedside examination.
Cotton
and the pin, the brunt of the pin and the sharp of the pin. That's all ordinary things I use. And as you all know, that sensory examination side is subjective. You cannot rely too much on patient's sensory findings. but to go correlate with the rest of the findings to give importance to the sensory.
2-3 people have asked, why is there ptosis in the case that you showed?
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that patient's ptosis is totally unrelated problem. He had a senile ptosis. He has got a blepharochalasis. I did not stress on that because there is nothing to do with the present problem in this patient. So I found that finding, just mentioned that's all. So I should not have mentioned that. That's not really unrelated.
Okay, thank you.